Hey, guys, tonight, we are not going to brave the open ocean or cross a desert. Instead, let yourself drift into a place of profound quiet, of stone and solitude. The air is cool and smells of rain, old parchment, and melting beeswax. You are wrapped in a coarse, heavy wool robe, and the only sound is the rhythmic drip of water from a gargoyle far above and the whisper of your own breath. We are going to spend a day in a medieval scriptorium, and the journey is 1 inch at a time. I should probably point out that with your modern appreciation for a warm room, a decent salary, and the ability to talk whenever you want, you would likely find this life less serenely meditative, and more a 1-star review on TripAdvisor. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I love reading where you're all listening from, so feel free to post your location and local time in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sound that wakes you is not an alarm. It is a bell, deep, resonant, and certain. It is the bell for matins, the first of the day's 8 canonical hours, tolling sometime after 2 in the morning. The world outside your small stone cell is pure darkness, a thick, inky blackness that the year has not yet decided upon. It could be winter, it could be autumn. It is just dark and cold, a deep, penetrating cold that seeps up from the flagstones and lives permanently in the walls. You rise not from a soft mattress, but from a simple straw-filled pallet. The straw rustles, a dry and lonely sound in the stillness. You've learned to arrange it just so to avoid the most obvious lumps. The stone floor is mercilessly cold against the bare soles of your feet. You pull on your woolen cowl, a simple, heavy garment that smells perpetually of damp wool, old books, and the faint, lingering scent of incense. There are no mirrors. There is no need for them. Vanity is a distraction. Your life is not about what you look like. It is about what you do. You join a silent procession of other shadowy, robed figures, your brothers, moving through the sleeping halls and cloister walkways of the monastery. The open-air corridors are slick with rain, and the wind whips around the stone pillars. Your footsteps make no sound on the worn stones, a learned practice of quiet movement. You proceed to the chapel, where for the next hour your voice joins dozens of others in the ancient, mesmerizing drone of Gregorian chant. The melodies rise and fall in the cavernous, candle-lit space, the Latin words a comforting, familiar current, spoken into the shared breath of the darkness. This is the first work of the day, prayer, the alignment of the soul before the labor of the hands. Ora et labora, work and pray. After the service, there is a meager breakfast, a piece of dark, heavy bread, maybe a small cup of weak, watery ale, which is safer to drink than the local water. And then, as the first hint of a weak, gray dawn begins to silhouette the eastern windows, you move to the second part of your day's purpose. You walk toward the scriptorium. The scriptorium is a long, narrow room on the upper floor, built over the monastery's kitchens. This is a practical choice. The gentle, rising heat helps keep the room from freezing completely, a small mercy in the depths of winter. The room is dominated by high, arched windows, unglazed but covered with tightly stretched shutters of oiled parchment or linen, which turn the cold daylight into a soft, diffused, milky glow. The air is still and frigid enough that you can see your own breath hanging in small clouds. You take your place at your assigned carrel, a small wooden desk, more like a tall lectern, partitioned from your neighbor. The bench is hard, unforgiving wood. Your posture will be a lifelong source of aches and pains. This is your office, and your workday, which will last until the bell for sext calls you to the midday prayer, is about to begin. Your most important tool is not your hand or your mind, but your discipline. The enforced silence of the scriptorium is absolute. The only permitted sounds are a cough, a sneeze, or the scratch of a quill on parchment. This sacred quiet leads to the development of a quirky, essential, fringe skill, a complex system of gestural language. To request a book, you extend your hands and make a motion as if turning pages. To ask for a missal, you make the sign of the cross. For a pagan text, which you still copy, to preserve the knowledge, you would mimic the motion of scratching yourself like a dog, as dogs were seen as unclean, pagan-associated animals. It is an entire, silent vocabulary. The original live-action emojis. This division of labor is a mainstream part of Benedictine life. You are a scribe. Other monks are farmers, masons, beekeepers. And as you prepare your workspace in the shared silence of the room, you are part of a quiet, scholarly debate that is still going on. Historians still argue about the literacy rates within monasteries, questioning whether every monk could read and write fluently, or if the scriptorium was a specialist workshop for a gifted, and perhaps even specifically recruited, few. Looking at the intense concentration on the faces of the brothers around you, you suspect it is the latter. This room is not for amateurs. This is where the memory of the world is given its physical form. Before a single word can be written, the page itself must be created and prepared. It did not arrive in a neat package. Its journey to your desk was a long, messy, and, frankly, smelly one. You pause for a moment, appreciating the flawless, creamy sheet before you. It began its life on the back of a young calf. Outside the cloister walls, in a workshop near the tannery, that skin was soaked for days in a bath of lime and water to loosen the hair. Then it was draped over a curved beam and scraped. First with a dull blade to remove the hair and epidermis, and then with a sharper one to remove any flesh and fat. The skin, now pale and glistening, was then stretched tightly on a large, circular wooden frame. As it dried, it was constantly scraped and thinned with a lunellum, a crescent-shaped knife, creating an even, taut surface. This pulling and scraping is what realigns the fibers of the skin, turning it from soft leather into stiff, durable parchment. Finally, it was rubbed for hours with pumice stone to make it smooth, and treated with powdered chalk or lead white to make it whiter and more receptive to ink. This entire arduous process for a single skin is a mainstream historical fact of this craft. A large Bible could require the skins of over 200 animals, so the sheet of vellum you touch so carefully now is not just a page. It is a product of immense labor and value, worth more than you might see in a year. The scent of it, faintly of chalk and lanolin, is infinitely better than the smell of the Silk Road camel you imagined once, but probably not as nice as the lye pits it came from. Now, you take a small pouch of pounce, a fine powder made from ground-up cuttlefish bone, and sprinkle it across the surface. You rub it in gently with a cloth. It is an abrasive that cleans any final, greasy residue and gives the vellum a subtle tooth, a texture that helps it grip the ink. Without this step, your beautiful letters might bead up and refuse to stick. Then comes the ruling of the page, the creation of its invisible architecture. With a sharp awl, you prick a series of tiny holes down the outer margins. The pricks are made through an entire quire, or gathering of pages at once, to ensure they all align. Then, you connect these holes. You use a metal stylus, usually an alloy of lead and tin, which leaves a faint, silvery gray line embossed into the vellum when guided by a ruler. It will not show on the final page unless you tilt it to the light, but it is the skeleton that will hold your text. You rule lines for each row of text, double lines for the top, bottom, and side margins. You map out the space for large initials and, in more complex books, columns. It's like preparing the world's most complicated and unforgiving spreadsheet, where one wrong move with the awl can ruin the page. As you draw your perfect lines, a debate is enacted that modern book historians still ponder. Book historians still argue whether the complex page layouts of these manuscripts were designed by the individual scribes themselves, giving them a degree of artistic freedom, or if they followed master templates, known as exemplaria, provided by the armarius, the head of the scriptorium, a sort of artistic director for the entire monastery's output. Your template seems quite prescribed. There is a grand plan here, and your job is to execute your small part of it flawlessly. The page is prepared, a pristine grid of possibility. Now, you must give it a voice. It is time to make the ink. You do not open a bottle. You follow a recipe, a kind of practical alchemy. The most common and durable ink is iron gall. You take a handful of oak galls, the strange, round growths that form on oak trees after a wasp lays its eggs, and crush them to a powder. You mix this with rainwater, or, for a better quality ink, wine, and let it steep for several days. Then, you add copperas, or ferrous sulfate, a mineral also known as green vitriol. The tannic acid from the galls reacts with the iron salts. As it oxidizes on the page, the liquid will turn from a watery gray to a deep, permanent violet black. Finally, you add a binder, usually gum arabic from an acacia tree. This gives the ink body and helps it adhere to the vellum. It's a messy process, and the ink smells sharp and acidic. If you get the proportions wrong, the ink will be too acidic, and, over the next few centuries, will literally eat through the vellum page. Getting it right is a science. Next, your pen. It is a quill harvested from the wing of a large bird, usually a goose. The first 5 flight feathers are said to be the best. With a small, sharp penknife, you carve the point. You slice off the tip at an angle, then carve the sides, and finally, with the utmost care, you create a tiny vertical slit down the middle of the nib. This slit acts as a reservoir, holding a small drop of ink through capillary action. The angle and width of this nib will determine the entire character of your script. A fresh quill is sharp and responsive. After a few pages of scratching on the abrasive vellum, it will soften and need to be recut. You will do this hundreds, perhaps thousands of times over the course of making one book. Now you begin. You dip your quill into your inkwell, a small horn, a cleaned-out seashell, or a little lead pot. You wipe the excess on a scrap piece of parchment, and then, with a deep breath held in your chest, your pen touches the page. You are copying from an older master text, the exemplar, which sits propped up beside you. The script you use is a clear and elegant Carolingian minuscule. Your hand moves with a slow, controlled grace. Each letter is built from a series of individual strokes, a downstroke, a hairline upstroke, a curve. The only sound in the entire scriptorium is the rhythmic, whispery scratch, scratch, scratch of a dozen quills moving over vellum. It is a sound of intense collective concentration. Of course, you make mistakes. When you do, the world doesn't end, but the correction process is painstaking. For a small error, you wait for the ink to dry completely. Then you take your scraping knife and, with incredible delicacy, you carefully scrape the ink from the surface of the vellum without making a hole. It's the original undo button, but one that required the skill of a surgeon and the patience of a saint. For a larger error, an entire word or line omitted, you would have to leave a space and make a small mark. Then write the correction in the margin, with another mark to show where it belonged. Your margins are not just empty space. They are the page's comments section and track changes. This very act of copying is the monastery's most mainstream contribution to Western civilization. During the early Middle Ages, these scriptoria were the sole centers of book production. Monks like you copied not just the Bible, but also the works of Virgil, Cicero, and other classical authors, preserving knowledge that would otherwise have vanished. But you also know a delightful, quirky detail of the trade: the importance of rubrics. The black ink is for the body of the text, but the headings, the first lines of chapters or important notes, are written in red ink, made from red lead or the more expensive mineral, cinnabar. This practice gives us the word rubric, from the Latin rubrica, meaning red ochre. It is the original highlighting. And as your hand forms the beautiful uniform letters, your work embodies a question still active today. Paleographers, the scholars who study ancient handwriting, still debate the significance of shifts in script styles over the centuries, questioning if they reflect simple regional fashions, or are evidence of deeper changes in education, monastic discipline, or even the speed at which texts needed to be copied in response to growing demand. Your disciplined hand, forming perfect letters, is a testament to your training. Personal flair is a sign of vanity, an error to be disciplined out of your work. The page is filled with elegant black text and bold red rubrics. The words are secure. Now, the page must blossom. The illumination, the lighting up of the text with gold and color, can begin. In your monastery, this may be a separate task, performed by a different monk, a specialist known as the illuminator. You may be both the scribe and the illuminator, or you might now pass your carefully written pages to Brother Thomas, whose skill with a brush is a gift from God. This next stage requires different tools. Before any color is applied, a preliminary drawing is often sketched into the empty spaces you left. This would be done very faintly with a stylus or a piece of charcoal, a guide for the art to come. You are working on a large inhabited initial D for the opening of the book of Deuteronomy. First comes the gold. Gold leaf is a sign of divinity, the light of heaven made manifest. You take a small pot of gesso, a plaster-like mixture of chalk, and a binder like rabbit skin glue, and with a fine brush, you paint the areas of your design that will be gilded. You build it up into a low, raised cushion, which will give the final gold a soft, three-dimensional look. You let it dry. Then, the magic. You lean in close and exhale a small, moist puff of breath onto the gesso, just enough to make it momentarily tacky. With tweezers, you pick up a sheet of gold leaf so impossibly thin it dissolves at a touch, hammered from a single coin into 100 leaves. You lay it carefully over the gesso. Then, you take your burnishing tool, a smooth, polished piece of hematite or agate, set in a wooden handle. With a firm, gentle pressure, you rub the gold. The effect is miraculous. The dull leaf transforms into a brilliant, solid, mirror-like surface. It gleams even in the dim light of the scriptorium, a tiny sun captured on the page. Now, for the pigments. They are precious minerals and plant extracts, ground by hand on a stone slab and mixed with a binder, usually egg tempera, a mixture of egg yolk and water. Your blue is the most precious of all, ultramarine, made from lapis lazuli from the mountains of Afghanistan. Its value here is literally worth more than gold. You use it sparingly for the robes of Christ or the Virgin Mary. Other blues come from azurite, a less stable copper carbonate. Your greens come from malachite or verdigris, a vibrant but corrosive pigment made by suspending copper plates over vinegar. Yellows can be a bright, toxic arsenic sulfide called orpiment, or a gentler yellow ochre. Reds are vermilion from cinnabar, or a rich crimson derived from the crushed bodies of tiny Kermes insects. With brushes made from a few hairs of squirrel or ermine fur set into a feather shaft, you begin to paint the tiny scene inside the initial D. Your style of illumination reflects a long tradition, a mainstream art historical fact. Perhaps it's the insular style of your Irish forebears, all intricate interlace and complex knotwork. Or perhaps it is the more classical, representational style of the Carolingian school. What is most fun, though, are the quirky drolleries you are not allowed to paint in this sacred book, but which you have seen in the margins of secular works. Bizarre little creatures, hybrids of man and beast, monkeys dressed as bishops, and most famously, knights jousting with snails. Little bursts of chaotic, creative energy. These little oddities have created a lively discussion. Art historians still argue about the meaning behind the more bizarre marginalia. Were they simple, whimsical doodles born of a scribe's boredom? Coded social satire mocking the powerful or symbolic representations of the chaotic, unholy world of temptation that existed just outside the ordered space of the sacred text. Your work today is solemn, but you allow yourself a small, secret smile, thinking of the jousting snail. The pressure is immense. One slip of your hand, and you could ruin weeks of work. It is the ultimate form of pray twice, paint once. The seasons have turned. Winter has come and gone. Spring is warming the stones of the monastery, and finally, after more than a year of work by multiple hands, the last page is illuminated. The last stroke of the brush is dry. The book is complete. Or rather, the pages are. The final act of its creation is yet to come. Your part is done, and now the finished pages pass to the bookbinder. You watch as he gathers your quires, the neat stacks of vellum you have all poured your lives into. He aligns them, one on top of the other, and prepares to stitch them. Using a special wooden sewing frame, he sews through the center fold of each quire, looping thick linen thread around strong cords or leather thongs that run perpendicular to the spine. At the top and bottom of the spine, he often sews in small, colored headbands, a professional touch that strengthens the book and adds a touch of subtle decoration. The ends of these cords are then laced through holes drilled in thick, heavy boards of wood, usually well-seasoned oak. These will be the covers. The boards are covered in leather, often calfskin or pigskin, which is soaked and stretched taut over the wood. The corners are neatly tucked. While the leather is still damp, he might impress designs onto it using heated metal stamps, creating intricate patterns. To protect the book, the binder adds metal. Thick brass bosses are hammered into the corners and the center of the covers, so that when the book lies on a lectern, the leather doesn't rub. Finally, he adds a clasp, a leather strap with a metal hook that will hold the book tightly shut. This is not just for decoration. A mainstream and practical reason for clasps was to keep the vellum pages, which swell and contract with humidity, pressed flat, preventing them from warping into unreadable shapes. The book is finished. It lies on the bench, heavy, solid, magnificent. It is a treasure, an object of incredible value. It could be worth as much as a farm. It will be chained to a lectern in the library, not just to prevent theft, but to protect a priceless community asset. This reverence for the book leads to one of the craft's most charming and quirky tidbits: the book curse. You have seen them, and even copied one yourself into a less formal volume. At the end of the text, the scribe would add a fierce personal warning to any potential thief or vandal. A typical curse might read, "For him that stealeth this book, let it change into a serpent in his hand and rend him. Let him be struck with palsy, and all his members blasted. Let him languish in pain, crying aloud for mercy, and let there be no surcease to his agony till he sink to dissolution. Let bookworms gnaw his entrails in token of the worm that dieth not," a wonderfully creative form of medieval DRM. As you place the finished gospel in the great wooden book cupboard, the armarium, the bells begin to ring for vespers. The day's light is fading. Your long labor is done. And in this moment of completion, you embody the central, quiet debate of your entire existence. Historians of monasticism continue to explore the internal, spiritual life of scribes like you, debating whether this repetitive work was an intellectual act of preservation, a penitential labor to fight the sin of idleness known as acedia, or a form of active meditative prayer, an offering of perfect work to a perfect God. You suspect it is all three at once. The day ends as it began in the chapel, your voice joining the ancient river of chant. A simple meal of pottage follows, and then you walk in silence back to your cold stone cell. The monastery settles into the great silence, the profound quiet that lasts until the bells for matins ring again. The strange and awkward punishments of medieval Europe. There's no need to open your eyes. Just find a comfortable position. Settle into the softness of your pillow, and let the sounds of the world around you fade into a gentle hum. Breathe in and let it go. We are going to take a little walk tonight, not through a sun-dappled forest or along a peaceful shore, but somewhere else, somewhere a little damper, a little smellier, and a great deal more awkward. Let the air grow cool around you. Feel a damp mist begin to settle in your imagination. The ground beneath your feet is no longer solid and even, but a mess of mud, straw, and discarded cobblestones. The air smells of wood smoke, wet wool, and something vaguely like boiled cabbage. You are in medieval Europe. But we are not here for the kings and queens, the grand battles, or the soaring cathedrals tonight. We are here for the quiet, peculiar, and deeply strange business of everyday justice. Forget the grim dungeons and looming executioner's axe you see in movies. While those certainly existed for the most serious of crimes, the soul of medieval punishment for the common person wasn't about ending a life. It was about correcting it through a very particular, very public kind of theater. It was about shame, a deep, abiding, communal shame that was meant to sting more than any whip. It was the community's ultimate, "We're not mad, just disappointed" speech, delivered with props. So let's begin our journey here, in the pre-dawn gray of a small German town. The only sound is a distant rooster, and the slow, rhythmic clang. Clang, clang of a bell. But it's not the church bell. It's too small, too personal. As you turn a corner onto the main path leading to the market square, you see the source. A man is being led by the town bailiff. But your eyes are drawn to what he's wearing on his head. It's not a hat. It is a heavy-looking iron mask, crudely fashioned and locked at the back of his neck. This is the shandmask, the mask of shame. It's designed not just to be uncomfortable, but to be instructive, a story for the whole village to read. This man's mask is shaped into a distorted comical flute, the mouthpiece forced between his lips. A little bell is affixed to the top, announcing his presence with every miserable step. You don't need to ask what he did. He's a bad musician. Perhaps he played at the tavern last night, and his music was so sour, so grating, that it started a brawl. Or maybe he's a traveling minstrel who promised epic songs and delivered something that sounded like a cat being introduced to a bagpipe. He didn't commit a crime against the law, but a crime against the ears, a crime against the vibe. And for that, he must walk the town, advertising his failure. You watch him pass, the cold iron muffling his grumbles. The townspeople are starting to emerge from their wattle and daub homes. They don't shout or throw things. Not yet. They just watch. A few children point. A woman shakes her head, a smirk playing on her lips. The humiliation is a slow burn. It settles over him like the morning fog. These masks came in many wonderful and weird varieties, each a piece of folk art forged in irony. A woman accused of being a gossip might be forced to wear a mask with a ridiculously long iron tongue lolling out. It's a literal representation of her sin. Historians have found examples of masks shaped like a pig's head, reserved for someone who displayed bestial table manners or acted with profound boorishness. The literal application of calling someone a pig. The sheer creativity is almost admirable. For a society without social media, this was an incredibly effective way to make a negative review go viral. It's performance art. And the performer's only motivation is the hope that everyone will eventually forget. The bailiff doesn't look angry. He just looks bored. This is just another Tuesday for him. The flute player will do his walk, perhaps stand in the market square for an hour, and then the mask will be unlocked and put back in storage, waiting for the next amateur poet or butcher who sells tough meat. The shame will linger far longer than the rust stains on his cheeks. Historians still argue whether some of the more elaborate masks were purely for punishment, or if they started life as props for carnivals and folk plays, only to be repurposed by town councils who saw a good, humiliating idea and decided to make it official. It's a blurry line, where festive mockery and legal retribution hold hands. The weight of that iron on his head, you imagine, is both real and symbolic, pressing down on his dignity with every clanging step. He didn't get a fine. He got a story attached to him. And in a small community, a bad story is a currency all its own. The clang of the musician's shame bell fades as you move on, drawn by the solemn toll of a different bell, the one at the local church. The fog has lifted slightly, revealing the damp stone of the church walls. Here, justice takes on a more spiritual, though no less public dimension. You see a figure kneeling at the church steps. They are dressed in a simple, coarse wool tunic, a penitent's garment. Their feet are bare on the cold, unforgiving stone. This person is undergoing public penance. Their crime might have been anything from blasphemy to adultery, to simply working on a holy day. The punishment is to confess their sin aloud before the priest and the entire congregation, and then perform an act of contrition. For many, this involved a barefoot procession through the very streets where they lived and worked, feeling the sharp stones and the cold mud, all while holding a candle. It was a physical journey mirroring their spiritual one, a slow, painful walk back into the community's good graces. It's a far cry from the theatricality of the mask. This is a quieter, deeper kind of shame. A transaction with God, but one that requires the entire village to witness the receipt. And sometimes, in the stranger corners of the belief, on the fringes of society, there was another way to deal with sin, one that existed outside the church doors. You imagine yourself turning away from the penitent at the church and walking towards the edge of the village, to a lonely hut set apart from the others. Here, you might find a truly unusual figure, the Sin Eater. This wasn't an official role. You wouldn't find it listed in any legal text. It was a folk practice, born of a deep fear that a person who died with unconfessed sins would be doomed to wander the earth as a restless spirit. The family, desperate, would summon the Sin Eater. This person, almost always a wretched outcast, would come to the house of the deceased. A meal would be placed on the chest of the corpse, typically a crust of bread and a bowl of ale. The Sin Eater would sit, say a quiet prayer or incantation, and then consume the food and drink. In doing so, it was believed that they were ritually consuming the sins of the departed soul, taking that spiritual burden onto themselves. For this service, they would be paid a small fee, often just a few coins. They absorbed the damnation of another so that person could find peace. It was, perhaps, the ultimate gig economy job, and the reviews were non-existent. They were feared and reviled figures. People would cross the street to avoid them, believing them to be brimming with the collected sins of the dead. Their presence was a necessary evil. Historians still debate the actual prevalence and prescribed role of the Sin Eater. Was it a genuine, recognized, albeit despised occupation in isolated parts of Britain and the Appalachian Mountains, as some accounts suggest? Or was it more of a powerful piece of folklore, a bogeyman created to explain away anxieties about the afterlife? Either way, the image is a potent one. A person condemned to live in the community, but forever outside of it, carrying the weight of everyone else's transgressions. They are the ultimate scapegoat, paid in stale bread and social isolation, a human vessel for everyone else's spiritual garbage. And in a way, their punishment never ends. It's a lifetime sentence of being the town's spectral janitor. The service is completed, the fee is paid, and the Sin Eater shuffles back to their hut on the edge of town, a little heavier in soul and a little more alone. Let's leave the heavy atmosphere of sin and salvation behind. We are heading towards the river that runs alongside the town. The air is still chilly, and the water is a murky, uninviting green-brown. Usually, this is where women come to do laundry or children try to catch small fish. But today, there is a small crowd gathering. At the center of their attention is a strange contraption. It's a long wooden arm, a cantilever, balanced on a fulcrum. On one end is a simple wooden chair. On the other, ropes. It looks a bit like a medieval seesaw of doom. This is the cucking stool, or, as it was often called, the ducking stool. Its primary purpose was for the punishment of a common scold, a term for a woman who was deemed to be too quarrelsome, too gossipy, or too argumentative. It was also used for dishonest tradespeople. But overwhelmingly, it was a tool to enforce a very specific idea of female decorum. You see a woman being strapped into the chair. She is shouting, which, in a moment of bleak irony, is probably what got her here in the first place. The officials don't engage. They simply check the ropes. The arm is swung out over the river. With a lurch, the chair plummets downwards, submerging her completely in the frigid, unpleasant water. She stays under for just a few moments, long enough to be shocking and terrifying, but not long enough to be a true danger. Then she is hoisted up, sputtering, hair plastered to her face, wool clothes heavy and clinging. The crowd offers a few half-hearted jeers. It's a very public, very wet humiliation. Sometimes the ducking would be repeated. Once, twice, thrice. The number of dunks was often decided on the spot, depending on the mood of the magistrate or the severity of her scolding. This wasn't about cleansing sin, like a baptism. This was about cooling passions. It was the world's first and most aggressive baptism for a bad attitude, designed by someone who was clearly told to go soak your head. One too many times, and decided to make it official policy. And while it was mostly used on women, there was a wonderfully fair-minded exception. One of the more delightful and quirky facts about the cucking stool is that it was sometimes used to punish male brewers or vintners who sold bad ale or wine. In these cases, they would be dunked not in the river, but in a vat of their own terrible, watery product. A punishment that is both humiliating and a very direct form of customer feedback. A kind of proto-health inspection with a lot more screaming. Historians still ponder whether the cucking stool was purely for humiliation and social control, or if it retained a shadow of the much older, more serious tradition of trial by ordeal. In a trial by water, a suspected witch would be thrown into a river. If she floated, she was guilty, as the pure water rejected her, and if she sank, she was innocent, though often drowned. The cucking stool isn't a trial, but it taps into that same primal fear of water, of drowning, and uses it as a tool. Was it a simple punishment or a faint, domesticated echo of a far more lethal practice? As the woman is unstrapped, shivering and silent now, you can't help but notice the message is clear. Public disruption, whether through words or watery beer, would be met with public disruption of another kind. A very cold, very damp kind. Not exactly a spa day. Now you're drying off, at least in your imagination, and wandering toward the true heart of the town, the market square. This is the hub of all activity. It's where goods are traded, news is shared, and of course, where justice is most visibly performed. Here, in the center of the square, are two pieces of very permanent, very solid public furniture. They are as much a part of the town's landscape as the well and the merchant stalls. These are the stocks and the pillory. They look similar, but they serve slightly different functions. You notice the stocks first. It's a low wooden bench with two hinged boards, featuring holes for the ankles. The victim sits, their legs locked in place, utterly immobilized but for their hands and torso. Further along, you see the pillory. This is a more imposing structure. It's a vertical board, held up by posts, with holes for the head and wrists. The person being punished has to stand, often on a small platform, bent forward in a deeply uncomfortable and vulnerable position. Remember the musician from earlier, with the flute mask. he at least got to keep moving. This is static. This is enforced stillness. The crime here could be anything from petty theft to cheating at cards to selling underweight loaves of bread. And this punishment is all about audience participation. Being locked in the stocks or pillory for a few hours is uncomfortable, certainly. Your legs would cramp, your neck would ache. But the real punishment came from the public. You are now a helpless target, a captive audience for your own shaming. The villagers would pass by, free to offer verbal abuse, to mock you, to lecture you, and, more often than not, to throw things. This wasn't random pelting. There was often a poetic justice to it. The crowd's reaction was a commentary on the crime. A baker who cheated his customers by selling bread that was too light might find himself pelted with handfuls of stale, hard dough. A fishmonger who sold rotting fish could expect to spend his afternoon being covered in his own unsellable product. It's like being on a very strange reality TV show where the audience participation is both mandatory and painfully literal. A TripAdvisor review delivered via Tomato. You can imagine the feeling. The chafe of the rough-hewn wood on your skin. Your neck cricked at an unnatural angle. The helplessness of watching a grinning apprentice wind up to throw a rotten egg, knowing you can't duck or even raise a hand to shield yourself. The smells of damp straw, unwashed bodies, and whatever decaying produce the crowd has on hand would be overwhelming. And there is some debate among legal scholars as to how much of the pelting was officially sanctioned. Was the bailiff quietly nodding along, considering it part of the sentence? Or was it a more chaotic, spontaneous public service that the authorities simply chose to ignore? In some places, throwing objects that could cause serious injury, like rocks, was forbidden, suggesting that the authorities wanted humiliation, not homicide. They wanted the lesson to be learned, the person to be shamed, and then eventually released back into the fold, stinking of spoiled fruit and regret. Unlike the mask, which tells a story, the pillory makes you a blank canvas. And the community gets to paint that canvas with its collective outrage. When you are finally released, stiff and sore and covered in filth, you would not only have paid your debt to society, you would have been its centerpiece, its cautionary tale, its afternoon entertainment. And the next time you thought about shortchanging a customer, you would likely remember the distinct and unpleasant splat of a week-old cabbage hitting you squarely in the face. The sun is beginning to lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the market square. The person in the pillory has been released, and they scuttle away, head down, trying to become invisible. The crowd is dispersing. The day's theater is seemingly at an end. But as you amble down a narrow side street, you see one last strange figure. A man is shuffling along, taking small, awkward steps. He seems to be wearing a barrel. This is not just any barrel. It is open at the top and bottom, so his head sticks out one end and his legs out the other. His arms are trapped inside. It rests on his shoulders, heavy and cumbersome. This is the drunkard's cloak. In Germany, it was the Schandmantel, or coat of shame. Its purpose is beautifully, simply self-explanatory. It's for public drunkenness. If you were found staggering through the streets, singing loudly, and generally making a nuisance of yourself, you might find yourself sentenced to wear this the next day. Imagine the experience. You are likely nursing a spectacular hangover. Your head throbs. And now you have to parade around town encased in a heavy wooden barrel. The rough oak digs into your shoulders. Splinters are a constant threat. You can't balance properly. The sound of your own feet on the cobblestones echoes inside the hollow space, a dull, miserable drumbeat accompanying your march of shame. It is, perhaps, the most perfect physical metaphor for a hangover ever invented. You are trapped, clumsy, and everything is too loud. It is the medieval equivalent of having your friends post your worst party photos all over social media, except the social media is the entire town, and the post is an actual barrel. You have all the dignity of a toddler stuck in a laundry basket. This wearable punishment came in a few forms. Sometimes, instead of a barrel, it would be a heavy wooden board worn like a sandwich sign, detailing the person's transgression. For other, more vague moral failings, a person might be made to carry a heavy object, like a large, ugly rock known as the Stone of Shame, around their neck. The point was always the same: to make the penance visible, awkward, and undeniable. The quirky and frankly grim tidbit about the drunkard's cloak is the variation where the bottom of the barrel was deliberately left out. This meant the wearer was, well, not wearing anything else underneath. They were forced to shuffle along, completely exposed, adding another profound layer of vulnerability to an already deeply humiliating experience. Legal historians still debate how, formally, these devices were integrated into the justice system. Were they a prescribed sentence handed down by a magistrate with specific guidelines? Or were they more of a local folk custom that the authorities just went with? A tradition that was simply what we do to the town drunk, without needing to be written down in a law book. The line between codified law and potent, universally understood custom could be very thin indeed. As the man in the barrel stumbles past, you see that he cannot even use his hands to wave away a buzzing fly. His punishment is a complete surrender of agency. He is no longer a person for this short time. He is a walking barrel, a symbol, a public service announcement about the perils of over-imbibing. He might have been the life of the party last night, but today he is a piece of awkward, ambulatory furniture. And tomorrow he will likely think twice before ordering that last flagon of ale. The light is almost gone now. A lone lamp casts a warm, flickering glow from a window. The sounds of the day have faded away. The clang of the shame bell, the shouts from the riverbank, the jeers in the market square, all have dissolved into the soft, deep quiet of the evening. You can feel the chill of the night air on your skin. The scent of wood smoke is stronger now, a comforting, timeless smell. The town is settling in, pulling its metaphorical blankets up to its chin. And as you stand here, in the quiet heart of this long-ago place, you understand. You understand that the masks, the barrels, the dousings in the river, they weren't just cruel. They were a kind of glue, a strange, uncomfortable but powerful adhesive that held the community together. These punishments were not meant to cast people out forever. The sin-eater was the exception, a figure doomed to the fringe. For everyone else, the goal was reintegration. You were shamed. You were made ridiculous. You endured the laughter and the scorn of your neighbors. And then it was over. You were allowed back in. You had performed your part in the play of justice. The whole town had witnessed it. And now you could return to your role as baker, farmer, or wife. A little wiser, perhaps, and certainly more humble. It was justice as a communal performance, and every citizen was both a potential actor and a guaranteed critic. But that world, with its heavy iron and its splintered barrels, has long since faded. The stocks and pillories have rotted away or become museum pieces. We have found new, less tangible, but perhaps no less potent ways to shame one another. The lonely, meditative routine of a 19th century lighthouse keeper. Let the outside world dissolve. Find that place of comfort in your bed, that perfect little hollow for your head in the pillow. Close your eyes and just listen to the sound of my voice. Breathe in a deep, calming breath, and let it all go. Tonight, we're not going to a bustling city or a forgotten battlefield. We are going somewhere else, somewhere that is both the edge of the world and its very center. The air around you is changing. It grows cool, heavy, with the clean, sharp smell of salt. You can feel a fine mist on your face. The only sound is a constant, rhythmic hush, the sound of waves meeting stone, over and over and over. It is just before dawn, in the late 19th century. And you are awake, because you must be. You are a lighthouse keeper. Your feet meet the cold stone floor of the tower's lowest chamber, your small living quarters. The room is circular, following the curve of the whitewashed stone walls. It's sparsely furnished. A narrow cot, a small wooden table, a single chair, and a shelf of books whose covers are softened by the damp air. This is not a job you take. It is a life you inhabit, a monastic existence for the god of maritime safety. The first task of the morning is not coffee. It's the ritual of extinguishment. You climb. The stairs spiral upwards, a cold iron spine inside the stone giant. 100, 150, 200 steps. Your hand skims the cool, damp wall as you go, the motion as familiar and unconscious as breathing. Each step is a small echo in the profound silence. The world outside is still a deep, inky blue, the horizon just beginning to bleed into a soft gray. Down below, the sea is a gentle, breathing creature, but you know its moods. You know the fury it can unleash. Today, it is calm. You arrive in the lantern room. The air here is different. It smells of warm metal, of whale oil, and of meticulous, unending cleanliness. Before you stands the reason for your existence here, the lamp, and its magnificent, crystalline soul, the Fresnel lens. It is a beehive of glass, a stunning, intricate jewel of prisms and bullseyes taller than you are. Its light, which has swept the sea all night, a silent guardian, is about to be put to bed. You follow the procedure. You snuff the great wick of the argand lamp, a mainstream marvel of its day, that created a steady, bright flame by allowing air to circulate through its center. And as the light dies, a new kind of silence descends, the silence of the day watch. For a moment, there is a transfer of responsibility. The sun is now on duty. Your job is to prepare the lamp for its return. Your work in this isolated place is often romanticized, but it's mostly just work. And some of that work is wonderfully, oddly specific. To keep your rations from spoiling in the damp sea air, you have learned the fringe art of sealing your perishable goods. You dip the tops of your flour and sugar sacks in melted wax, creating a hard, airtight cap. You store eggs by coating them in lard, which fills the pores in the shell, keeping them fresh for months. It's a strange kind of domestic science, born of absolute necessity. You are not just a keeper of the light. You are a master of preservation, a curator of your own survival. And as you stand here, in the quiet gray dawn, watching the sun begin to rise, you might reflect on your purpose. Historians still argue whether the romanticized image of the solitary, philosophical keeper was the norm, or if most keepers, especially in more remote stag stations like this one, were simply practical men, former sailors, farmers, craftsmen, who saw this as a steady, if profoundly lonely, government job. A pensionable post at the end of the earth. But lonely or not, the work remains the same. The lamp must be ready. The light must not fail. With the sun now climbing the sky, casting a weak, watery light through the glass of the lantern room, the real work begins. Your most sacred and repetitive ritual, cleaning the lens. It is a task of almost surgical precision. First, you pull on a soft, clean linen apron. No buttons. Nothing that could accidentally scratch the priceless glass. The Fresnel lens, with its hundreds of individually polished prisms, was a technological miracle. It could gather the light of a simple flame and project it for 20 miles or more. To scratch one of these prisms would be a desecration. It would be like a priest scuffing the altar. You begin by gently dusting every single surface with a soft feather brush, into every crevice, over every curved plane of glass. It's a slow, meditative process. Your mind can wander, but your hands must be certain. Then comes the polishing. You have a special kit, a wooden box containing chamois cloths, soft cotton rags, and a small pot of jeweler's rouge, a fine, pink polishing paste. You apply a tiny amount to your cloth and begin to work, pane by pane, prism by prism. You breathe on the glass, a small huff of warm air, then polish, 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 until every inch of the lens is so perfectly clear it almost disappears, until it hums with potential, drinking in the morning light and fracturing it into 1,000 tiny rainbows on the lantern room floor. You are its caretaker, its doctor, its devoted servant, and you might feel a strange, deep affection for this inanimate object. It is, after all, your only real companion here, the only thing that shares your purpose. It is your silent, glittering colleague. It never complains, though it does demand constant, meticulous attention. Your day is built around its needs, not your own. Think of it as the most demanding, high-maintenance, and utterly gorgeous roommate in history. Your duties extend beyond the glass. There is the brass to be polished. All the fittings, the vents, the lamp housing itself, it must all gleam. The salt in the air is a relentless enemy, eager to corrode and tarnish. You are fighting a slow, losing battle against entropy, but you fight it with polish and elbow grease every single day. One of the less-known duties, a quirky and sometimes grisly fringe tidbit of the job, involved birds. During migration season, drawn by the mesmerizing light, vast flocks of birds could, and often would, crash into the lantern glass during the night. A grim morning task for the keeper was to clear away the small, feathered bodies. To prevent this, some lighthouses were fitted with bird-scaring devices, or keepers would install a series of perches below the lantern to give the exhausted travelers a safe place to rest. You've become an unintentional ornithologist, noting the species and the seasons, a silent witness to their vast, perilous journey. Maritime scholars still debate the true impact of the switch from organic fuels, like the high-grade sperm whale oil you use, to mineral-based kerosene in the later part of the century. Kerosene was cheaper and more readily available, but it burned differently, requiring new equipment and new cleaning techniques. For keepers, it was a major shift in the daily routine. Was it a welcome modernization, or did it sacrifice the cleaner, brighter burn of the traditional, expensive oils? The subtle chemistry of the flame was a science all its own. Now, with the lens immaculate and the brass shining, you move to the clockwork mechanism below. This is what makes the light flash its unique signature, a specific pattern of light and dark that tells a sailor not just, "Here is a light," but you are off the coast of this specific point. A giant, weight-driven system, like a grandfather clock, must be wound. You turn the heavy crank, hoisting the weights back up the central column of the tower, a task of pure physical effort. And with that, the heart of the lighthouse is ready for the coming night. Its glass eye is clear. Its pulse is wound and waiting. Your work, however, is not confined to the lantern room. A lighthouse is not just a light. It is a building, constantly under siege by the elements. And so, your midday hours are filled with the endless practical chores of maintenance. You descend the iron staircase, your boots clanging, the sound a brief interruption of the endless whisper of the sea. Today's task is painting. It is always painting. You mix a thick, white paint in a heavy bucket. The goal is not beauty, but survival. Layer upon layer of lead-based paint is the tower's only armor against the corrosive salt spray and the lashing winter gales. You hang from a rickety-looking harness, 100 feet above the churning water, and apply another coat. It's slow, repetitive work. Scrape away the flaking old paint, the rust blooms. Apply the new. It gives you time to think, or, more accurately, time not to think, to let your mind settle into the rhythm of the brushstrokes, up and down, back and forth. Your entire world reduced to a 2-foot square of stone and the smell of paint. It's the least glamorous part of the job. You're less a noble guardian of the waves and more of a high-altitude handyman waging a one-man war on rust. Your job is perhaps 10% saving ships and 90% convincing a stone and metal structure not to immediately dissolve back into the ocean. After the painting, there is the logbook. This is one of your most solemn duties, a mainstream, required part of the job. The government that employs you insists on meticulous records. You sit at your small wooden table and open the large, leather-bound volume. With a steel nib pen and a bottle of ink, you record the day, the date, the time, the wind direction and speed, the barometric pressure, the condition of the sea, any ships sighted, a distant smudge of smoke on the horizon, identified by its silhouette as a naval steam frigate or a schooner under full sail, tacking against the wind. You note the supplies used, ounces of oil, number of wicks trimmed, inches of paint applied. Every single thing is recorded in a neat, careful hand. The logbook is a testament to order in a world of chaos. It is your proof that you are here, that you are vigilant, that you are doing your duty. And here, in the pages of the logbook, you perform a quirky, private act of preservation. Sometimes, when a particularly interesting piece of seaweed or a small, iridescent shell washes up, you will press it between the pages of a less important volume. Perhaps a tide table book from a few years ago. It is a secret, personal collection, a tangible record of the ocean's little gifts, a bit of the outside world, brought inside and made permanent. Historians still debate to what extent these official logbooks were purely objective records, or if keepers subtly use them as personal diaries, embedding their loneliness and frustrations between the lines of wind speed and barometer readings. A note about unsettled seas might also describe an unsettled mind. A description of a passing ship might carry a deep-seated longing for the world beyond the horizon. The official record may hide a private confession. As you close the logbook, the ink drying, you hear a distant sound, the chug of a supply boat, a welcome but brief intrusion. Once a month, maybe less in winter, it brings provisions, mail, newspapers that are weeks out of date. You'll exchange a few words with the crew, shouting over the waves. They will never set foot on your rock. The exchange of goods is done with ropes and nets. Then they will wave and turn back to the world of men, leaving you once more to the world of stone and sea and sky. The supply boat is gone, a fading speck on the vast blue plain. The quiet returns, but it feels different now, deeper. The brief contact with the outside world has only served to highlight your isolation. The afternoon stretches before you, a great expanse of time to be filled. This is the part of the job that breaks men. Not the storms, not the work, but the crushing, silent weight of the hours. And so, you have your routines, your defenses against the madness of solitude. First, there are the books. Your Lighthouse service provides a traveling library, a small wooden crate packed with 20 or 30 books, which is rotated between stations every 6 months. You have read every single book in the current box. Twice. You've read dense novels of London society, technical manuals on steam engines, collections of poetry, and a farmer's almanac from 3 years ago. You now know more about the finer points of crop rotation than you do about your own extended family. When your eyes tire of reading, you turn to your hands. Many keepers, you know, take up crafts. They build intricate ships in bottles, a miniature world captured in glass. They knit thick, oily wool sweaters. They carve birds from driftwood. Your chosen craft is knot tying. You have a small board with dozens of different complex knots. You practice them over and over. The Matthew Walker knot, the heaving line bend, the Turk's head. It is a language of rope. It is practical, a skill from your days as a sailor. But now it has become a form of meditation. Your fingers move through the complex patterns, a kind of tactile rosary, a way to occupy your hands and quiet your mind. The silence here is so complete that you begin to develop a new relationship with sound. You can tell the mood of the sea just from the pitch of its roar against the rocks. You know the sound of the wind when it's about to shift direction. You have given names to the different gulls based on the cadence of their calls. It's this deep solitude that leads to one of the most curious phenomena of lighthouse life, the long trick, a keeper's term for the psychological strain of a prolonged watch. It was a fringe belief among keepers that some lighthouses were unhappy, that they could amplify a man's melancholy. This wasn't supernatural. It was a folksy way of describing the profound psychological impact of the environment. You find yourself talking aloud, to the lamp, to the gulls, to yourself, just to hear a human voice, even if it is your own. Psychological historians continue to explore the fine line keepers walked between serene solitude and debilitating mental decline, debating whether the job selected for a certain stoic, introverted personality type, or if it actively created that personality through forced isolation. Were you suited for this life because of who you are, or have you become who you are because of this life? It's a chicken and egg question asked in a circular room, 100 miles from anywhere. You pause your knot tying and walk to a small porthole. You look out at the endless water. It's a beautiful prison. You are a king of a tiny stone kingdom. Population 1. The view is magnificent, but it is always the same view. And you know that tonight, when the light begins its sweep, you will be the only one for miles around to see it. The quality of the light begins to change. The pale blue of the afternoon softens, warms, and deepens into gold and rose. The sun is lowering itself towards the horizon. It is time. The second great ritual of your day is about to begin. The lighting of the lamp. You climb the iron stairs again. This time, the feeling is different. It is not the weary climb of the morning, but a climb filled with anticipation, with purpose. You enter the lantern room. The setting sun fills the space, igniting the prisms. For a few brief, glorious moments, the lens holds two suns, the one dying in the west, and the one about to be born in your hands. You work with deliberate haste, following the official procedure laid down in your service manual. Timing is everything. A mainstream historical fact of the keeper's life was the strict adherence to the sunset and sunrise tables provided by the government. You are to light the lamp at the precise moment the sun disappears below the horizon. Not a minute before, not a minute after. On this schedule hangs the safety of unseen ships. You trim the wick one last time. You check the oil reservoir. You give the clockwork mechanism a final, gentle tap. Everything is ready. The sky is turning from orange to a deep purple. The sea darkens. The world holds its breath. You strike a match. The scrape and hiss are thunderous in the stillness. You touch the flame to the wick. It catches, sputters for a second, then grows into a steady, bright golden light. A small sun born in the darkness. Now, you release the brake on the clockwork mechanism. With a soft click and a low whir, the gears engage. The massive lens, weighing over a ton, begins to rotate. Slowly, gracefully, it turns, gathering the light from your lamp and focusing it into a single, piercingly brilliant beam. The beam sweeps out of the lantern room, a great white sword cutting through the twilight. It glides across the dark water, illuminates a distant wave, and continues its silent, circling patrol. Your lighthouse has its own unique signature, its fingerprint of light. Perhaps 2 flashes, then 10 seconds of darkness. Another 2 flashes, 10 seconds of darkness. For a sailor navigating these treacherous waters at night, that pattern is more comforting than any map. It says, "You are here. I am watching." It's an oddly satisfying thought, being a linchpin in a system you can't see. A kind of anonymous collaboration. You send a signal, they receive it. No words are exchanged, no thanks are given. But the connection is real. It's like being part of the world's slowest and most important text message chain. Historians and engineers still debate which innovation was more critical to a keeper's effectiveness, the powerful Fresnel lens itself, or the simple, reliable clockwork mechanism that gave each light its unique, identifiable character. One provided the power, the other provided the information. Both were essential, turning a simple beacon into a sophisticated tool of navigation. Your job is to serve both masters, the glass and the gear. The light sweeps past and the lantern room is plunged into momentary darkness, save for the central glow of the lamp. Then the beam comes around again, a silent, rhythmic pulse. The lighthouse is alive. Your watch has begun. The night deepens. The stars emerge, sharp and brilliant in a sky unspoiled by any other light, except for your own. Your beam sweeps through the darkness, a rival to the moon. The long hours of the night watch are a strange, suspended time. Your job now is one of vigilance. You must stay awake. You listen to the hum of the mechanism, attuned to any change in its rhythm. You watch the flame, ensuring it burns steadily, with no smoke. The tower, which can feel like a prison during the day, becomes a sanctuary at night. You are the sole inhabitant of a small, bright planet, swinging your light through the cosmos. Below you, the sea murmurs its old stories. Sometimes, on the clearest nights, you can just make out the faint, distant spark of another lighthouse, leagues down the coast, a fellow solitary soul keeping their own watch. You feel a kinship with them, a silent comrade in this lonely vigil. Sometimes the silence is broken by phantom sounds, a fringe quirk of life at sea known as auditory illusions. You might hear the faint tolling of a bell where there is no bell, or the cries of sailors on a ship that isn't there. It's just the wind and the water playing tricks on a tired mind, but it keeps you alert. The greatest challenge of this life, and its greatest mystery, remains the one posed by the famous case of the Island Moor Lighthouse in the Outer Hebrides. In 1900, 3 keepers vanished without a trace. The clocks were stopped. A meal was left uneaten. An overturned chair. No bodies were ever found. Speculation has raged for over a century, and historians still debate the fate of those 3 men, with theories ranging from a freak wave that swept them away to a sudden bout of madness, to something far stranger. The story is a cautionary tale, whispered among keepers, a reminder that the sea and the solitude can take everything. But tonight is not a night of storms or mystery. It is a night of profound peace. The rhythmic sweep of the light becomes a part of your own breathing. In, and the beam glides over the dark water. Out, and it continues its journey. You feel a sense of dissolving, of becoming one with the tower, with the light. You are no longer just a man in a room. You are the awareness of the light, the consciousness of the beacon. And finally, as the first hint of gray appears on the eastern horizon, your watch nears its end. The cycle is almost complete. Soon you will extinguish the flame and begin your day of cleaning, polishing, and waiting. The meticulous art of the ancient Roman perfumer. Come now, find your comfort. Let the world outside your window fade into a gentle, indistinct hum. Feel the weight of your body as it settles into the softness of your bed. Breathe in a slow, quiet breath. And as you release it, let go of the day. Tonight, we are traveling to a place of overwhelming sensory input. But our focus will be on just one of them. Not the clatter of chariot wheels on stone, or the taste of wine and honeyed figs. We are going to journey through a world of scent. The air around you is changing. It grows warm and dense. It smells of baked bread from a nearby pistachio, of dust, of charcoal smoke, of damp Tiber wool, and, less pleasantly, of the city's open drains. It is the complex, unapologetic smell of life. It is mid-morning in ancient Rome, in the time of the Flavians. And you are not a senator or a soldier. You are something far more important to the daily fabric of life here. You are a perfumer, an unguentarius. You stand at the entrance to your small shop, your unguentarium, tucked away in the Vicus Unguentarius, the street of perfumers. Outside, the city is a roaring river of humanity. Inside, it is your sanctuary of scent. The air here is a different language. It's a carefully composed poem of myrrh, rose, and spikenard, an expensive shield against the chaos of the street. Your shop is small, but elegant. Along one wall are shelves lined with small, beautiful vessels. Delicate, teardrop-shaped glass bottles from Syria. Tiny, carved alabaster pots from Egypt. And simple, terracotta amphorae filled with your base ingredients. A heavy marble counter separates you from your customers, but your true work happens in the back. Your work is not about selling. It is about creating. You are an artist, a chemist, an alchemist of memory and desire. And today is an important day. A new shipment has arrived from Ostia, the port of Rome. It has traveled thousands of miles to reach your small workshop, and it contains the soul of your next creation. Your hands, stained with the faint residue of 1,000 different scents, are ready to begin. The city may rush, but in here, time moves at the pace of a flower opening. This trade in luxury scents is a massive, empire-spanning enterprise, a mainstream fact of the Roman economy. Your small shop is the final link in a chain that stretches to the far corners of the known world. As you begin to carefully unpack a wooden crate, the smells that rise from the packed straw are intoxicating, telling stories of distant lands. You lift out a canvas sack, and the sharp, woody aroma of frankincense from the southern coasts of Arabia fills the air. Another reveals the dark, almost spicy scent of cinnamon bark, which you know has traveled those long, dusty silk roads, probably on the back of a very tired and perpetually unimpressed camel. Then you find it, a small, lead-lined box. You open it carefully. Inside, nestled in soft wool, is a strange, waxy, grayish lump. It smells indescribable, a mix of the sea, of earth, of sweetness. This is ambergris, a treasure coughed up by the sea, a substance that will act as a fixative, holding and amplifying the more delicate scents in your perfumes. This fringe, almost mythic ingredient, which you know now comes from whales, but most Romans believe is a type of sea foam or strange mushroom, is worth a small fortune. Your supplier in Alexandria assures you it's a fair price, but his idea of a fair price always seems to involve an extra 2 denarii for unforeseen pirate complications. Classicists and historians still debate how much genuine geographical knowledge Roman artisans like you possessed. Did you truly understand the complex trade routes and biological origins of your ingredients, or was your knowledge more a blend of practical, market savvy, and fantastical stories? Tales of giant cinnamon-guarding birds in Arabia, or strange sea monsters who produced these magical resins. For now, you just know that this lumpy gray rock from the sea will make your perfume last twice as long. That is all the magic you need. With your precious new ingredients stored away, your first major task of the day begins. It is the creation of the body of the perfume, the silent vessel that will carry the scent. The base oil. You could use common olive oil, pressed from ripe black olives. It is cheap and plentiful, but you are a master of your craft, known for your quality, and so you use only the finest base, Omphacium. You move to the back of your workshop, where a small but heavy stone press stands waiting. Piled beside it are baskets of green, unripe olives, harvested weeks before they would be ready for eating. Pressing them at this stage yields far less oil, but the oil it does produce is pale green, almost colorless, and most importantly, nearly odorless. It will not interfere with the delicate scents you intend to add. The work is physical. You load the olives into the press, turn the great wooden screw, and watch as a thin, pale green trickle of oil begins to seep out, collecting in a terracotta basin below. It is cool, almost viscous to the touch. This first pressing is the purest. It is a painstaking low-yield process. It takes 10 baskets of these hard green olives to produce a single amphora of Omphacium. It is the base of your art, a canvas of liquid quiet. Think of it as the original extra virgin olive oil, whose family tree is so exclusive it barely talks to the other oils. This oil, a mainstream and vital component of Roman perfumery, is also used for other things. Wealthy Romans use it as a high-end massage oil at the baths, or as a medicinal treatment. A quirky, fringe tidbit you know from your copy of Pliny the Elder is that this specific type of oil, held in the mouth, was believed to strengthen the teeth and gums and even whiten them. A kind of ancient oily mouthwash, though hopefully one you spit out afterwards. No one wants their breath smelling vaguely of olives when they're leaning in for a kiss perfumed with expensive Egyptian rose. After you have pressed enough oil for the day's work, you carefully strain it through multiple layers of fine linen to remove any sediment. The final product is beautifully clear, a pale, liquid ghost of the olives it came from. Other perfumers might use almond oil or moringa oil from Egypt, each with its own subtle properties and extravagant price tag. Scent historians still argue whether the choice of base oil was purely about cost and scent neutrality, or if artisans believed certain oils had a superior chemical ability to bind with and hold specific floral or spice molecules, making a rose perfume in almond oil fundamentally different from one in omphacium. You trust your omphacium. It has never failed you. It is a perfect, silent stage, waiting for its actors to arrive. Now begins the most patient part of your art, maceration, the gentle steeping of aromatic materials in the oil to slowly, painstakingly capture their essence. Today, you are making rhodinum, a classic and much-loved rose perfume. For this, you need the finest roses. You don't use local Roman flowers. Your patrons expect the best. And the best roses come from Paestum, with its mineral-rich soil, or even better, from the Nile Delta in Egypt. This is a well-established, mainstream fact of the Roman perfume trade. A crate, shipped in haste to your shop this morning, is filled with thousands of pink rose petals, still cool and impossibly fragrant from the morning dew they were picked in. Their scent is deep, sweet, and complex. You take a large terracotta vat and fill it with your freshly pressed omphacium. You gently warm it over a low charcoal brazier. It must not get hot, merely warm enough to open its pores, to become receptive. Then you begin to add the rose petals. Handful after handful, you submerge them in the warm oil, stirring with a long, flat wooden paddle. This is not a quick process. The oil must be steeped with the petals for a day. Then tomorrow, you will strain out the now pale and wilted petals, squeeze the last of their scented oil from them, and add a fresh batch of petals to the same oil. You will repeat this process 7 times. Each time, the oil becomes more saturated with the pure essence of rose, the scent deepening from a light floral hint to a rich, complex, intoxicating perfume. While rose is your primary task today, you also work with other, stranger materials. In another corner, a different oil is being steeped with a less romantic ingredient, fenugreek. This quirky and much cheaper plant gives off a strong, nutty, almost caramel-like scent. It's not a luxury perfume on its own, but you've learned that adding a small amount to another floral oil can give it a surprising, pleasing depth and warmth. It's one of your little trade secrets. You work in a state of deep sensory concentration. The room is quiet, warm, and filled with the rich, honeyed scent of roses. It's like making a very slow and extremely expensive soup that no one is allowed to eat. Your entire being is focused on the subtle changes in the oil, the deepening color, the evolving fragrance. It is less a science and more a conversation between you and the ingredients. Historians and experimental archaeologists who have tried to recreate these Roman perfumes still debate the exact methodology. Did perfumers follow precise written recipes, as some sources like Pliny suggest? To 10 pounds of oil, add 3 pounds of petals. Or was the art more intuitive, a feel developed over a lifetime of practice, where the perfumer would add ingredients until their highly trained nose told them the balance was perfect? You use the recipes as a guide, a starting point. But your nose, an instrument calibrated by years of dedicated practice, has the final say. It knows when the rhodinum is ready. Days have passed. The slow, patient work of maceration is complete. You now possess a collection of terracotta amphorae filled with beautifully scented oils, the soul of rose, the sharp greenness of lily, the deep sweetness of violet. But these are just single notes. Your true artistry lies in blending them, in creating a symphony of scent. This is what separates an artisan from a mere merchant. Your client today is a wealthy senator's wife, preparing for a lavish banquet. She does not want a simple rose perfume. She wants something unique, something that speaks of power and sophistication. You are creating a custom blend for her, a perfume that will have no name, but will be known only as hers. You begin with your magnificent rose oil as the heart. To this, you will add a base. You take out your powdered frankincense and myrrh. These resins provide a deep, earthy, and slightly spicy foundation that will give the perfume longevity. It is the anchor. You carefully measure out the powdered resins and mix them into the oil. Next, you need to fix the scent, to bind all the elements together. Remember that strange, waxy lump of ambergris. Now is its moment to shine. You add a tiny, almost infinitesimal scraping of it into the blend. It melts into the oil, and while its own scent seems to recede, it performs a kind of magic, holding on to the volatile rose molecules and preventing them from vanishing too quickly. But you have one more trick, a secret passed down from your master. You take a small bottle of the finest aged Falernian wine. This quirky addition, mentioned in ancient texts but often overlooked, seems counterintuitive. But you know that a small splash of the wine, with its complex esters, will lift the top notes of the perfume, giving it a bright, sparkling introduction before it settles into the warmer heart of the rose and myrrh. It's the final flourish, the secret ingredient. Finally, the perfume is ready, but it cannot be sold in a plain pot. The vessel is as important as the scent it holds. Romans, as any student of history knows, were masters of glass-making. It's a mainstream archaeological fact that perfume bottles, or unguentaria, are one of the most common finds in Roman domestic sites. You have shelves of them. You select a small, iridescent glass bottle, blown in a workshop in Roman Syria. It is the size of your thumb, with swirls of blue and gold glass that shimmer in the light. Its beauty complements the precious liquid it will hold. The final product is a feast for the senses. The color of the oil, the feel of the cool glass, and the magnificent, complex scent. It's the ancient equivalent of couture packaging, and sometimes the bottle costs almost as much as what's inside it. As you carefully funnel the thick, scented oil into the bottle, you reflect on the composition. Modern perfumers talk about top notes, middle notes, and base notes. Historians of scent still debate whether Roman perfumers thought in these structured, triangular terms, or if their blending philosophy was more holistic and painterly, combining scents the way a painter might combine colors on a palette, seeking a single, harmonious accord rather than a layered, sequential experience. Your own process feels more like the latter. You weren't building a pyramid. You were painting a picture. The sun is low in the sky, casting long, warm shadows across the stone floor of your shop. The day's work is done. The senator's wife has collected her bespoke perfume, her face a mask of serene satisfaction. You have sold a few smaller bottles of lily and spiced saffron oil to other patrons. The new shipment is stored, new oils are steeping, and a quiet sense of accomplishment settles over you. You move through your shop, performing the slow evening ritual of tidying up. You clean the marble counter, put away your mixing tools, and cover the large vats of macerating oil. The air is still a rich tapestry of 100 different scents, but it is a calm, familiar cloud, the scent of your own small world. From your doorway, you watch the city begin to change. The frantic energy of the day subsides. Torches are being lit, casting a flickering, unsteady glow. The smells of evening meals begin to drift from nearby apartments. You are tired. Your hands ache from the press, your back from bending over the vats. But it is a good kind of tired. The perfume you created today is already out in the city. It is adorning the wrists and neck of its new owner as she prepares for her grand dinner party. It is a tiny, invisible but powerful presence in the world. It will evoke memory, create desire, and project an aura of effortless luxury. It's a far more subtle status symbol than wearing gold, but in a city that understands nuance, it is far more effective. The scents you create are woven into the very fabric of Roman life. From the splash of lavender water a man uses after a shave, to the heavy, incense-laden unguents used in funeral rites. It is an ephemeral art. Unlike a statue or a mosaic, your creation disappears as soon as it is used. It lives only in the air and in the memory of those who experience it. The slow, tedious journey of a Silk Road spice merchant. Settle in now. Let your body grow heavy, sinking into the mattress beneath you. There is nowhere else you need to be. Breathe in and feel the gentle rise of your chest. And as you breathe out, let the day's tensions drift away with it. Tonight, our journey will not be swift. There will be no galloping horses or soaring ships. Our journey will be slow, so very, very slow. Measured not in hours or days, but in the deliberate, rhythmic steps of a patient beast. The air around you is changing. It grows warm and dry, and it carries a scent, a complex, almost overwhelming perfume. It's a tapestry woven from dozens of exotic threads. The sharp, sweet spice of cinnamon, the woody musk of cloves, the earthy punch of cumin, and underneath it all, the dry dust of a sun-baked road. You are in Antioch, a gateway city where west meets east. It is the late morning, and you are about to begin. You are a merchant, and your business is the stuff of dreams. Spices, incense, precious things that travel halfway across the known world to reach the kitchens and altars of the Roman Empire. Your preparations have taken weeks. Before you stands your life's savings, your hope for the future, condensed into a small but mighty train of Bactrian camels. 2 humps, perpetually unimpressed expressions. They are loaded with bales of glassware from Sidon, fine linens, and caches of Roman gold and silver coins, which you have painstakingly sewn into the thick wool of your saddle blankets. Out of sight, out of mind, or so you hope. Your true wealth, however, is not what you are taking, but what you hope to bring back. The whisper of it is on your lips. Peppercorns from India, worth their weight in silver. Nutmeg and mace from islands you can only imagine, said to be a cure for all manner of ailments. And of course, the primary reason this road even exists, silk, luminous, impossible fabric from the land of the Ceres, the Chinese. But that destination is a year away, maybe more. Your mind cannot truly comprehend the distance. You think only of the first leg, the first of many. A great lumbering camel groans, a sound of deep and profound protest. It's an expression you are already very familiar with. This will be your primary companion for the foreseeable future. The two of you have already established a working relationship based on mutual distrust and a shared appreciation for sitting down. You give the lead rope a gentle tug. The caravan begins to move, a slow, shuffling river of beasts and goods, flowing out of the city gates and into the vast, open land. You take one last look back at the familiar stone walls of Antioch, then turn your face to the east. The journey has begun. And its first lesson is always the same: patience. This great network of paths you are traveling is, of course, the Silk Road, a mainstream fact so well known it is almost a cliché. But you don't think of it that way. For you, it is simply the road, a series of interconnected trails, oases, and markets passed from merchant to merchant. A fringe tidbit you understand better than the scholars in Alexandria is that your personal security relies not on guards, but on obscurity and wit. You've learned to pack your most valuable spices inside sacks of less desirable goods, like dried beans. No one robs a man for his beans. At least, not yet. Historians still argue about the true flow of traffic on these roads. Was it primarily goods moving west and gold moving east? Or was the exchange of ideas, Buddhism flowing into China, Nestorian Christianity into Persia, new technologies everywhere? The road's most world-changing, if unintentional, cargo. You, of course, are mostly concerned with your profit margins. But even so, you carry stories and news from the West, and you will return with tales from the East. You are a link in a chain, whether you intend to be or not. The city of Antioch is now a hazy memory on the horizon behind you. Ahead, the landscape unfolds into the dusty plains of Mesopotamia and the Persian plateau. And the true rhythm of the journey sets in. It is a rhythm of profound, crushing monotony. Your day starts before dawn. You wake in the chill desert air, your blanket damp with dew. The first sound is the quiet chewing of the camels. It is a constant in your life now, the soundtrack to your existence. A wet, grinding, meditative noise. You break your fast on a piece of hard, dry flatbread and a handful of dates. Water is strictly rationed, sipped from a goatskin bag that gives it a faint, leathery taste. Then begins the work of loading the camels. A complicated puzzle of ropes and knots and balanced weight that you must solve every single morning. The beasts grumble and complain, sometimes spitting a foul-smelling stream of regurgitated grass in your general direction. It's their version of a morning traffic report, and the outlook is always congested. And then you walk. The sun climbs the sky, a merciless white orb. The landscape is a relentless palette of beige, brown, and gray. You walk beside your led camel, the coarse rope a familiar chafe in your hand. The pace is slow, so slow. A human can walk faster than a loaded camel caravan. But the pace is not set by you. It is set by the endurance of the animals and the long shimmering distance to the next well. Your mind drifts. You count your steps. You try to recall a poem you once heard. You think about the food you will eat when you reach Palmyra. You have entire detailed conversations with your camel, who listens with an air of stoic indifference, occasionally turning its head to offer a long-suffering blink. After several weeks of this, you see a welcome sight on the horizon. Not a city, but a low, square, fortified building. A caravanserai. This is a mainstream and vital feature of the Silk Road, a roadside inn, a service station for the ancient world. You guide your caravan through its large, arched gateway into a central courtyard. The air is thick with the smell of animals, cooking fires, and dozens of unwashed travelers. Here, you can rest for a night or two. You water your camels at the central well. You trade for fresh supplies, and you exchange information with other merchants. You speak a patois of Greek, Aramaic, and Persian, sharing news about bandit activity, the price of saffron in Ctesiphon, the condition of the mountain passes. This is your community. A fleeting, transient brotherhood of the road. You don't know their names, only their cargo. The man with the frankincense, the woman with the lapis lazuli, the family taking Parthian horses east. As evening falls, you sit by a small fire, eating a stew you've cooked with a pinch of your own valuable cumin. It feels impossibly decadent. In these moments, you hear about a fringe practice that you find both fascinating and useful, the use of carrier pigeons. Some of the wealthier merchants traveling in the opposite direction have released birds, carrying news of their safe passage or revised market orders back to their partners in Antioch. It is an act of incredible hope, releasing a small bird into this vast emptiness, trusting it to find its way home. Scholars and archaeologists continue to debate the ownership and operation of the caravanserai network. Were they centrally administered by the ruling empire, the Parthians, and later the Sassanids, as a form of state infrastructure to encourage trade? Or did they spring up more organically, run by local chieftains or private entrepreneurs who saw a clear business opportunity in the middle of nowhere? To you, it doesn't matter who owns it. What matters is that the walls are thick, the well has water, and for tonight, you can sleep without one eye open. The accommodations are less 5-star and more has a roof, but after weeks on the trail, it feels like a palace. Leaving the relative comfort of the Persian plains behind, you begin to climb. The air grows thinner, cooler. The soft, dusty path gives way to jagged stone. Ahead of you, dominating the horizon, is a terrifying, magnificent wall of rock and ice, the Pamir Mountains, the roof of the world. Your camels, so suited to the desert, struggle here. Their wide, soft feet are not made for these sharp rocks. At a trading post in a mountain foothills town, you make a necessary exchange. You trade your grumbling camels for a new kind of beast, yaks. The yaks are formidable creatures, covered in long, shaggy hair. They are built for this environment. They move with a slow, ponderous certainty, their breath pluming in the cold air. They are significantly fluffier than your camels, and while they don't complain quite as loudly, they have an air of silent, mountainous judgment. You half expect them to ask you for your climbing permits. The journey becomes vertical. The path is a narrow ledge cut into the side of a cliff. To one side is a sheer rock wall. To the other, a dizzying drop into a green valley thousands of feet below. You hug the wall. You do not look down. The work is even harder now. The air is thin, and every breath is a conscious effort. You feel a constant, dull headache. The nights are bitterly cold. You huddle in a thick felt coat, your world reduced to the plodding rump of the yak in front of you, and the endless gray stone of the path. This passage through the Pamirs is a well-known mainstream choke point on the Silk Road, a harrowing trial for any merchant. But what the history books don't capture is the sound. The only sounds are the wind, a high, mournful cry as it funnels through the passes, the crunch of the yak's hooves on the loose shale, and your own ragged breathing. The breathtaking view is, quite literally, taking your breath away. Your diet changes. You chew on dried apricots and hard walnuts bought in the valleys, their intense sweetness a small burst of joy in the cold, thin air. This is a quirky, practical reality of high-altitude travel that has sustained travelers in this region for centuries. The quick energy is a lifeline. At night, you shelter in stone huts or beneath rocky overhangs. The stars here are different. They are hard, sharp diamonds scattered on black velvet, seemingly close enough to touch. There is no haze, no humidity. Just you, your yaks, and the immense, silent weight of the mountains. The greatest fear here is not bandits. They are not foolish enough to wait up here, but the weather. A sudden snowstorm can obliterate the path, trapping a caravan for weeks. You watch the sky constantly, reading the clouds. Historians and geographers still argue about the precise paths used by caravans through mountain ranges like the Pamirs. Were there a few primary, well-established routes, or was it a more fluid network of smaller trails, with experienced local guides choosing the way based on the season, local political situations, or even rumors of new, safer passages? For you, the path is whatever the guide in front of you says it is. You place your trust in a man you just met, who communicates mostly in hand gestures, and who seems to have a personal, ongoing argument with the mountain itself. You can only follow, and hope his argument is a convincing one. After what feels like an eternity, the descent begins. The air slowly thickens. The world turns from gray stone back to brown earth. You have crossed the roof of the world. You trade your stoic yaks back for grumpy camels, old friends at this point, in a bustling oasis city like Kashgar. And ahead of you lies the next great filter, the desert. This is the Taklamakan, the Sea of Death. Its name, in the local dialect, is sometimes translated as, "You go in, but you do not come out," a cheerful thought to carry with you as you stock up on water. Unlike the deserts of Persia, which were hard-packed and stony, this is a desert of endless, shifting sand dunes. It is vast, empty, and terrifyingly beautiful. The caravan doesn't cross the heart of the desert. That would be suicide. Instead, you cling to its southern edge, a perilous, week-long journey between each life-giving oasis town. The sun is your enemy again, but it's a different kind of enemy now. The heat is a physical presence, shimmering in waves off the sand. You wrap your head in cloth, leaving only a slit for your eyes. Remember that time in Egypt you heard people used crocodile dung for sunscreen. You almost wish you had some now. Almost. The silence here is even more profound than in the mountains. There is no wind in the passes, no crunch of stone. Just the soft, sibilant whisper of the wind over the dunes and the padded footfalls of your camels. It is a silence so deep you can hear the blood pulsing in your ears. The greatest danger here is getting lost. A sandstorm can rise in minutes, wiping out all tracks, changing the shape of the dunes themselves. When one hits, there is nothing to do but make the camels kneel, huddle on their leeward side, cover yourself completely, and wait. You lie there for hours, the world a roaring, sand-blasted chaos outside your woolen blanket and simply endure. Sometimes, in the heat haze of the horizon, you see things: a shimmering lake, a distant grove of trees, a mirage. Your veteran caravan master has taught you how to tell the difference. But still, the temptation to believe is a cruel joke played by the desert on your thirsty soul. At night, you experience one of the strangest fringe phenomena of the natural world: the singing sands. Under the right conditions, as the temperature drops, the shifting sand grains create a low, resonant humming sound. It rises from the dunes themselves, a deep, musical vibration that feels like the desert is breathing. The first time you hear it, it is deeply unsettling, a ghost song from the earth. But you come to find it strangely comforting. It is a sign that the desert is alive. This desolate stretch of land is, to historians, one of the Silk Road's most iconic stages. The mummified remains of travelers found in the dry sand tell stories of those who failed to make it. And those same sands create a challenge for modern scholars, who still debate how much the geography of the Taklamakan has changed, and whether the routes described by ancient travelers like Xuanzang or Marco Polo could even be followed today. The desert swallows the past, and you wonder if, 1,000 years from now, any trace of your own passage will remain. Probably just a single, lonely sandal. Finally, after weeks of sand and thirst and shimmering heat, you see it on the horizon. And this time, it is not a mirage. It is a line of green, a testament to human endurance, an oasis, Dunhuang. You have crossed the Sea of Death. Your arrival in a city like Dunhuang, or further on, the grand imperial capital of Chang'an, feels like stepping into another world. After a year of desolate landscapes and sparse encampments, the sheer sensory overload is dizzying. The streets are thronged with people. You see Sogdian merchants with their distinctive hats, Buddhist monks from India in saffron robes, Turkic horsemen, and the local Han Chinese. It is a river of humanity, speaking a dozen languages you don't understand. The air smells of steamed dumplings, sweet plum wine, burning incense from the temples, and the unfamiliar spices of the East. After a year of eating flatbread and dried meat, the sudden availability of a bowl of hot, savory noodles is a pleasure so profound it's almost a spiritual experience. Your journey is, in a sense, over, but your work is not. You find a space in the vast, noisy Western market. You unload your camels for the last time. You carefully unwrap your bales of pristine Roman glass. It catches the light, and a small crowd gathers to admire the foreign craftsmanship. Now begins the slow, deliberate process of trade. This is a game of patience and posture. You do not speak the language fluently, so you hire a local translator. You sit, drink endless cups of bitter tea, and negotiate. You will trade your glassware, your linens, your carefully hidden coins for the goods you came for. The silk is mesmerizing. It is cool to the touch, impossibly light, and it shimmers with a life of its own. You trade for bolt after bolt of it, carefully inspecting each one for flaws. You trade for small, tightly sealed bags of peppercorns, cloves, and cinnamon. Their scent is the smell of a future fortune. This bustling city, the eastern terminus of your journey, was one of the largest and most cosmopolitan cities in the world. It's a mainstream historical fact that Tang-era Chang'an had designated foreign quarters, where merchants like you could live and trade. But you are more interested in a wonderfully quirky Chinese innovation that makes your life much easier: flying money. Instead of taking on the massive weight and risk of carrying coins all the way back, you can deposit your silver and gold with a trusted agent and receive a paper certificate of credit. You can then redeem this certificate with another agent back in a major city, closer to home. It is a system built on a vast network of trust, a piece of paper representing a fortune, and it feels like a quiet miracle of commerce. The paperwork is still a nightmare, but at least it's a lightweight nightmare. Of course, the whole economic model of this exchange is a source of endless debate for historians. What was the true balance of trade? Was the Roman and Persian world truly being drained of its silver to pay for luxury goods like silk and spices, as some ancient commentators worried? Or was the flow of goods and wealth more balanced and complex than that simple narrative allows? You just know that the peppercorns you are buying for a handful of silver here can be sold for a small mountain of it back home. The math works for you, and for now, that's all that matters. Your business is concluded. Your new cargo is packed. You have sold your tired camels, ready to purchase new ones for the journey west, the journey home. And as you sit in the courtyard of your lodging, looking at the setting sun, a profound weariness settles over you. A sense of accomplishment, yes, but also the bone-deep knowledge that you have to do it all again, in reverse. The mountains, the desert, the endless, dusty plains. The road is waiting. But that is a worry for another day. Tonight, the air is cool, the city is humming with life all around you, and your bed is soft. Not a bedroll on hard-packed earth or a drafty corner of a caravanserai, but a real bed. Let the image of that journey fade. The wind, the sand, the sun. Let it all dissolve into the comfort of your own bed in your own quiet room. You do not need to walk beside a camel tonight. You do not need to cross any mountains or deserts. Your only journey now is into sleep. A slow, peaceful, well-deserved sleep. Let go of the road. Let go of the day. And just drift